And joining me now is former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. He's also an NBC News International Affairs analyst. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with your reaction to the president's speech, especially the direct line he drew from the threat of autocracy in 1944 to today.
Well, I think the president's absolutely right about that. We were in a fight against fascism back in D-Day. We won that battle. Then, because of the Soviet Union, we went into a Cold War that was also a fight between a totalitarian dictatorship and the free world. And then after the Cold War, we thought for a while that that was all over and that the whole world wanted to be democratic. The whole world wanted to join with us in a kind of collection of international community of democratic states. But that turned out not to be true. And today you have the rise of autocracy in Russia and China, Iran, and it creates not exactly the same challenge, but we are back to a world between autocrats and democrats, like the president just described. And he's absolutely right. All the autocrats are watching to see what will happen in Ukraine. Will the free world prevail there? And I would add something that he didn't say. They're also watching our election to see what happens here. And are we truly committed to democracy here back at home? That's something qualitatively different from the era when he was speaking about earlier today.
And Ambassador, on that point of the world watching what happens in Ukraine, of course, one of the most significant alliances that came out of World War II was NATO. It had been strengthened in the first few years since the war in Ukraine broke out. But if the war continues, can that last?
Well, I most certainly hope so. It's the greatest alliance in the history of the world. It's the most enduring alliance. It's based mostly on values, by the way, too. Almost all members are democracies. And for us, it advances our security interests. We're always better dealing with autocracies and potential competitors. And even if we have to go to war, we're always better doing it with allies than going it alone. And this alliance has been a very stabilizing force for security and stability in Europe for many, many decades.
And Ambassador, as Kelly just mentioned, Presidents Biden and Zelensky are scheduled to meet on this trip. And reporting suggests frustration is building over the pace of U.S. aid. Ukraine says the U.S. is hamstringing them. The U.S. says its caution is out of fear of escalation. More than 2 years in, is that risk the same?
Well, that tension has been there from the beginning because President Zelensky, his watch is ticking faster than ours. Every day he has to get reports from his intelligence officials about Ukrainians that were killed, and he doesn't have a way to stop that. And I know, because I've talked to him personally about it, that is a heavy, heavy burden. For President Biden, he wants to do, as he just said in his speech, he wants Ukraine to win and to repel those Russian forces. He also does not want to drag the United States into a war with Russia. And toggling between those two objectives has been a major challenge, I think mostly successful, but it leads to frustration on the Ukrainian side. They would like more weapons faster and be able to use those weapons wherever they see fit militarily. We won't let them use them everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And to that point, just today in an interview with ABC News, President Biden reiterated that the U.S. would not sign off on weapons being used to attack Moscow. But his remarks, President Biden's remarks about the threat of autocracy come just a day after President Putin threatened to provide weapons to hit the West to other countries. So that, of course, comes after a U.S. decision to allow Ukraine to use those weapons to hit Russia around the border, as we mentioned. So how seriously should we view this threat from Putin?
Well, first, I want to applaud the Biden administration's decision to allow Ukraine to use those weapons on the border around Kharkiv. I think it was an absurd position that they were being attacked from Russian territory, but couldn't fight back. We believe in self-defense, at least I do. It's codified in the UN's charter. Ukraine has the right to self-defense. That was the right decision. Putin, of course, is responding as he always does. He's threatening, he's escalating. This is designed to deter us. I have no way to assess. I don't have access to secret intelligence anymore like I used to when I worked in the government. But I see it as a bluff. I think one of the things we've learned so far in this war is Putin is ready to attack Ukraine and ready to attack civilians and ready to kidnap Ukrainian children. He'll do anything to Ukrainians, but he has yet to ever attack us or the NATO alliance. I think that's a good thing, and I think it'll remain true for the remainder of this tragic, barbaric war that he is conducting inside Ukraine.
And Ambassador, Putin has also renewed his threat of nuclear weapons. Do you think that's also a bluff?
Again, these are hard things to understand. Unless you're talking to Putin directly, you don't know. But we've seen him threaten this for now 2.5 years, and he has not followed through on that. What he's trying to do is to prevent us from giving Ukraine more effective weapons. And from time to time, that's been successful.
And Ambassador, what would you like to hear from President Biden tomorrow? And then also looking ahead to next week, the G7 is meeting. What should their priorities be?
Well, tomorrow, to the extent I understand it, he's going to give a big speech on democracy, and I think that's great. I think he needs to frame for the American people why it matters what happens in Ukraine, why this is not just their fight, but our fight for the free world. And I think he needs to explain that very clearly, that it has implications for peace and security in Asia. What Xi Jinping might do vis-a-vis Taiwan might be informed by how successful Putin is in Ukraine. So I think that's the objective of the speech tomorrow. Right. At the G7 meeting, I hope he will do more to squeeze the Russian economy. They've done comprehensive sanctions together. The G7, I applaud that. And at the same time, I think they could do more, in particular to reduce technologies that are flowing in from Russia, not just from China, which has been getting a lot of news lately, but from the Western countries, from Germany, from Europe, even from the United States of America, through intermediaries going through countries like Georgia and Kazakhstan, Hong Kong. We've got to stop that, and I hope the G7 will announce new measures to try to reduce that technology, because every time we allow that technology to go to Russia, that technology is being used to kill Ukrainian civilians and Ukrainian soldiers.
Ambassador Michael McFaul, thank you so much, as always, for your expertise.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.